Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Two Idiots Podcast. I'm Reg,
I'm Randy.
and joining us this week is Brianna Seewald. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So before we get into it, maybe introduce yourself and to kind of get us to know you a little better and our listeners and stuff, tell us what's your favorite movie as you're introducing yourself.
Ooh, that's always such a hard one. Okay, so my name is Brianna. I'm a new nurse. I graduated from nursing school in 2019. My favorite movie, it's a toss-up between The Green Mile and like the original Footloose, I think.
Interesting. Those are
Two
those are
classics.
good choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine always leans towards Shawshank and Dark Knight, but you know, we can't all be classics, I guess. Randy probably just watches,
Avengers Endgame on repeat 30 times.
Yeah, that too. Okay, cool. Well, so welcome here, Brianna. Thank you for joining us. So basically you were a nurse, and we should say I personally heard of you from the Paranormies. They had posted something on their Instagram a few months ago or something, and since then I've been thinking we should try and get her on. You maybe hear her story and tell it and stuff, and for whatever reason life got in the way and I ended up not reaching out, but I'm glad that we did. So before we begin, we should let everybody know there's a GoFundMe. We'll get into the nitty gritty of kind of what all that's for, but I want to make sure that before we get too far in, that people know there's a GoFundMe to try and support your cause. Do you have the link handy, or we'll just send them to your social media?
I can send you can either send them to my social media or I can send you the link after.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, we'll throw it in the show notes for sure. But folks, if you're listening, as we get into more of the specifics, be sure that if you're able to donate, that would be amazing. So now, tell us. How do I get into this smoothly? This is a terrible segue, but let's roll into it here. So basically, you were involved in a traumatic, kind of horrific car crash. Maybe tell us when that happened and kind of go from there.
So on August 17th of 2020, I was on my way home from a night shift. And it was a beautiful day. I remember leaving work thinking, this is going to be a gorgeous day. I'll go home, shower, have a few hours of a nap, and I will spend the rest of the day outside. And unfortunately, I never made it home. When I was on my way down the 210, it's like kind of an infamous intersection now here in Manitoba. The 210, where the 12 meets, there is many accidents there. And on this day, a man chose to failed to yield to the right of traffic, and I T-boned him going highway speeds. So,
geez. So then he was coming on to the number 12 as you were on the number 12, or
yes, he was coming from St. Anne across like toward the Lorette Way, and I was headed toward from Beausejour towards Steinbach.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I've had that happen to me and very narrowly missed out. Someone was coming from St. Anne, same way. I think they were turning to go towards Steinbach, going southbound, and they slowed down. But I was watching them. I was doing whatever, $1.10, $1.20, going to work in the morning. It was all dark. He came across, slowed down, didn't stop, just blew the stop sign, ran through. And so then I didn't even have time to hit the brakes, just veered around, pulled a 360 on the other side, I was still in the left lane. I started in the right lane, veered past him. I vividly remember seeing the fender of the van right, like, beside me. And I veered around, kind of sat there for a little bit. I'm like, just kind of stunned. People stopped and checked and stuff, and the person, it looked like they got out of their van and then just hopped in and took off. So I have no idea who it was, but so that intersection, that checks out. That's a very common problem.
There are a ton of really bad intersections in this province.
Yeah. So where on their vehicle did you end up hitting them?
So I ended up hitting this truck perfectly like a T. I hit the truck so hard. So I was driving a Nissan Versa, so just like a four-door car, and I T-boned him right in the middle of this truck. And I hit the truck so hard, it took the whole like cab of the truck and like took it off of the axis of the truck. So
Wow.
It is amazing that truck didn't roll over. I never wanted, there's dash cam footage of all this, and I always said that I was never going to watch it. Unfortunately, as we get into it, I had to watch it before the court, fearing that they were going to show it in court that day. And you can see, like, the force that I hit the truck with, it momentarily lifted the truck off the ground and moved it sideways.
Wow.
And like my vehicle kind of the impact was so severe, it pushed the whole front end of my car in and like kind of flipped my car to the side a little bit. And I remember that motion. I remember the impact and feeling like my car was like moving around, felt like everything was moving, and then everything just stopped, like this sudden stop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, oh my God, I just got into an accident here.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about it, because I've never been in a serious accident, but many near misses. I commute to Winnipeg every day, and it happens wintertime and whatever else. But luckily enough, I've avoided it. But even when you're getting close to it, that almost mental state that you get to where it's you almost half expect it or half accept it, and things sort of slow down. I feel like I imagine you experienced something like that as well.
Yeah, it's almost like, because I rolled my truck before too, so I've been in a vehicular accident of a severe-ish nature, and luckily I wasn't hurt. But it's almost like your body just sort of tunes in to everything going on. So it does sort of slow down. You kind of feel like the Flash when he activates his super speed. It's like, oh, like it's a weird sort of clarity. Yeah. Like how the world seems kind of like it is now. It's almost like everything becomes really clear, because I can vividly remember counting the rolls as I was going in the ditch. And I was like, I don't know why I would do this otherwise, but I think it's just because it's like an instant shot of adrenaline and you're just so hyper aware.
That's 100% it. And like, unless you've been in that situation, you don't know. And it's been so hard to try to explain this to people otherwise. Like, I remember coming down the highway and I remember seeing the truck coming into the yield, and I was thinking from the stop sign to the yield, I'm like, holy, you know what, he's coming there way too quickly. But I was going highway speeds, and I was in the right hand lane. I'm like, oh, please be turning into the left hand lane. And by the time I got there and I realized, holy, like shit, he's not stopping. It was like this moment of like slow motion where I could actually see my vehicle hit into the side of him. But the black box in my car shows there wasn't even enough time to take my foot completely off the acceleration before I hit him. Yeah. Like there was not even a moment to brake. So like it happened so quickly, yet I felt there was a moment of like slow motion where I watched the whole thing just like happen right before me.
It makes 3 seconds feel like 3 minutes for sure.
Yeah. Which is sort of, well, you always say the 4 seconds, right? 4 seconds changes your life, and clearly it has. Likely it probably changed the other driver's life in some ways too. Did he just hopped out and got into an ambulance himself, or kind of after the accident, was he around?
So obviously I was trapped in my car. The dash and everything was pushed right into me, and what I could kind of see through the broken windshield, I was so concerned about the other occupant and the other person's vehicle. And when the man who got in my car, there was a bystander who got in my car who actually saved my life that day. And the very first thing when he got into my car, I asked about him, oh my God, how is the other person? Is someone taking care of them? Are they alive? Are they okay? Like, please tell me they're okay. And he's like, stop moving. But that man in front of your car, I don't know if you can see, he's walking, that's him. And I'm sure that this other gentleman was in shock too, obviously not meaning to get into an accident that day, but he never offered his help there at the scene. And I heard after that he received minimal care, refused to go to the hospital, refused to be transported, and just got picked up at the site and left.
Wow. I mean, it's so tough, because I don't want to play devil's advocate and give this person the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, if I were in that situation, how would I react? I would like to think that I would be engaged, and I would try to make sure that what happened, that we can mitigate the issue, right? I can't say I would, but I like to think that I would.
Right. At the same time, a lot of people's fear response would kick in too, right? Which is kind of what I imagined happened with him. Like, oh, I'm in the wrong here. I got to just get out of here because I don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to go to at that time, you don't know. Even if you're in the wrong, you start to think about yourself and you're like, oh crap, like I got to get out of here.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, you would have maybe distance a little bit to try and process, right? Not that that's fair, and it clearly isn't, but I can almost understand the response.
And I do understand that. That's why everyone initially, they were like, are you mad at him? Like you must be so enraged at this person. And I don't really hold anger for this person. I hold anger for the situation and what it's caused in my life. Sure. But like I said from the beginning, what is 4 seconds? When you're in the car, that could have been playing on the radio. That could have been reaching behind your seat, trying to grab something for your kids and stuff like that. Obviously, most people don't do that in the middle of a 4-lane highway or intersection. Sure. but 4 seconds is literally the difference between life and death. And that showed, like,
Yeah.
it is a miracle that I lived during that accident. And there's not many cases after that where the impact of the speed in which we hit each other, that there was, you know, two viable people. There was almost always fatality at the speeds that we hit. And so I never really hold anger for him. But I also, again, I was sitting there in the most unimaginable pain. And my first concern was him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just the nurse in me and like always like trying to, you know, help somebody else. I've always been like that. But I still was so concerned about him. And if I could have got out of my car that day, I'm sure if I could have got out of that car, I would have had enough energy to take a few steps, I'm sure, or at least to make sure that he was okay.
Yeah.
So I think of that often though too. Like there's always two sides of that coin, right? So
of course, and it, like you said, it with distracted driving or stuff like that. I mean, I fully admit I've done it multiple times. I grew up. My dad's a truck driver, and I would watch him. He'd be in the big truck, and he'd have his atlas on his lap, and he's flipping through looking at maps, and he'd be, you know, basically like grabbing food from his fridge in the back, and it was, he never lost control. It's all great, right? But it's great until it's not. And so I think I inherited a lot of that. My wife can attest to it. I inherited a lot of that, those tendencies, and it's not great. And
the majority of us are guilty of it at some point. If anyone's telling you they haven't done it, like, they're lying to you.
Yeah,
it happens.
So basically, this driver just blew the stop sign with no excuse.
He stopped at the stop sign, but sped across without stopping or yielding to the right of traffic on the highway. And he basically just admitted to the police, like, I wasn't paying attention and I just went for it. And you can see in the dash cam, there was no attempt to stop. It was a quick, like gun did almost, to try to beat traffic. And when I heard in court the day that he hit me going 49, like, that was half the speed. In that short distance, he hit me going half the speed I was driving on the highway.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, you know what, this is just my opinion, and like, I will never know. But that is someone trying to get across there almost. That is someone, you know, I think I can beat them maybe. That's the kind of feeling I got from that.
It sounds like I'm late for work, I got to get there kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, that's sort of my my thing. It's like it's when you're late for work and you're like, oh, the traffic sucks and the lights are all against me and it's all, I gotta fucking hustle. Let's go, right? And it's seldom worth it. Clearly not in this situation. So moving the story forward, basically you slam into him, and based on some of your other videos, I remember you saying that you remember that, like, you were conscious, you remember the crash, and then leading up past that, maybe tell us your injuries and kind of what the fallout of that was.
Yeah, so I never lost consciousness, not through that entire time. There was a brief moment during extrication where I remember, like, everything kind of started becoming quiet, and for a moment I didn't feel any pain, and it was just like peaceful. And I remember in that moment thinking that I was dying then. That was it. This is it. I'm going now. But besides that, I remember absolutely everything. Like, I remember sitting there trying to frantically get out of my car, but it was that moment when I went to reach for the handle that I realized that where the handle should be was back here. Wow. And when I reached for it, I seen that my left leg was pushed behind me. And that's when I realized the dash was into me, and everything started coming really quickly after that. But the very first thing was the pain. There was this pain, like, low back level. And I knew then that something was wrong. And because of where my leg was at, I'm like, this is my pelvis. I probably shattered my pelvis, like, the way that my leg was. And my car I've never been in a car accident. My car was so smoky and it smelled like fire. It smelled like the car was on fire. So I was frantic trying to get out of there, thinking, like, I'm stuck in here and I'm going to burn alive if I don't even try to get out. Yeah. And I reached for my passenger side door, and the pain just, like, tore me apart. It, like, took my breath away even more than it already was. I remember not being able to breathe, and that's why I wanted out. I wanted fresh air so bad. And I couldn't move. The pain was literally paralyzing. And I just, like, begged at that moment, like, if I'm, like, my grandparents, my papa's passed away, and we're very close. And so I just, like, kind of looked up, and I'm like, Papa, please don't let me die alone in here. And, like, if I am dying, please at least take the pain away. Yeah. And just as I said that, John got in the back of my car, and he quickly grabbed my head and, like, started to stabilize me. And he was like, you need to stop moving. My name is John. And he was very calm. He had this, like, almost angelic voice to him. And he never once quickened his words or seemed like he was scared, even if he was. Yeah. And he was just explaining to me, you were in an accident, 911's been called, help is on the way, help is on the way. And I remember seeing the phone out of the corner of my eyes because it was hooked up to my aux cord. And so I grabbed it, trying to call my fiance, because I thought that would be the last time I spoke with him. And John just kind of like casually let go of his hand from my head and he's like, I'll take that from you now. Like, you don't need to call anyone, help is on the way.
Yeah.
And he kept telling me to stop moving because I was like frantic, but I couldn't put the full weight of my body like in my seat. Like the pressure from sitting was so severe, it was like choking me almost.
Right.
And he was like, I see you're bad, you're a nurse, tell me what's wrong, so when EMS comes here they can help, like we can triage together. And I'm like, oh right, I should be much better at this than I'm doing right now. I should be a lot more calm, because you always think that you're going to be calm and collected if something traumatic ever happens to you, or you're in like a mass casualty situation, that you will be the calm one, that your professionalism will take over.
Well, in a way, it sounded for like a minute you did, because when you're describing after you got hit, you're like, okay, I was here, my foot was over here, I think I shattered my pelvis. It's like you were kind of running through like an emergency scene triage before it all kicked in, and it was like, oh shit, something's happened. Like immediately you went to this, and this is happening, and then it sort of overwhelmed. But it seemed like you did sort of immediately go through what was happening.
I guess I never actually thought of it like that, but yeah, I guess I kind of did. But John was just like, okay, well, what hurts? And I'm like, what doesn't hurt right now? I was like, I don't know what hurts most. I was like, I think I've shattered my pelvis or my back. I was like, the pain is so severe that I can't catch my breath. And I was like, and I felt my stomach, and I was like, it's getting very rigid. So if it's my pelvis, I'm probably bleeding internally. So you need to tell them we need to get out of here. Yeah. And he was like going up, and I remember him feeling the back of my head and pulling me into the seat, and he just like planted his arms around me, and he just told me, it's very like, you need to stop moving, does your neck hurt? And I'm like, no, my neck doesn't hurt. I was just like, I can't breathe. I was like, I think maybe I have a pneumothorax. The dash is like crushed into me, like I'm having a very hard time breathing, maybe I broke my ribs, I'm not sure. And after he asked me if I could feel my neck, he was like, do you feel your legs? And I hadn't even been thinking about them at that point, because everything else was consuming me at that point. And that was the moment I realized I couldn't. I had no idea where my feet were, if they were, like, I knew after I pushed my left leg down, it cracked. I pushed it down with such force, it cracked the remaining plastic down off the dash. And I couldn't see my feet because of where the dash was. And I remember that, like, panic just set in. He was like, hey, they're going to get you out of the vehicle now. Like, it's time to breathe. And when EMS finally got there, they kind of handed him a blanket as close as they could, to just cover my eyes. And I remember there being this like faint, like, it sounded like a flick on like the glass, like a ting, and like the glass just kind of like shattered over me. So they broke the driver's side window. And I remember that fresh air. Like, I think I will always remember that feeling of that cool morning fresh air just like hitting me like a blanket.
Right.
And finally being able to catch my breath. And then, like, I remember like seeing where they were trying to see in, but my car was so mangled, they were trying to see where they could get me out. So they're like, we can't open the doors, like, we're gonna have to get the jaws of life. And so I remember it feeling like it was taking so long to get me out of there.
Yeah.
And when they finally got the door off, I guess they kind of seen how I was in there, and they just said, Brianna, I'm sorry, there's no easy way for us to do this. We just have to kind of pull you out now. So I remember two of them grabbing they handed John a C-spine collar, they put it on me, two of them grabbed my shoulder, and John had the top of my head. And at that time, they told John he could get out of the vehicle, someone else would take his place. And when they turned me to the side, I felt like I was being ripped in half. Yeah. And when they started to finally pull me out of the vehicle, I felt the click, click, click of my lower spine over the spinal board. And that's when that moment of like, just calm. I remember not being able to feel anything. Everything was just, I seen the blue sky, and it just like quiet, couldn't hear anything.
Right. And
it was just, I felt at peace. And that's when I was like, I'm dying. And I just felt like I was accepting it at that point. Like, I'm not in pain right now. And this is how I'm going to go. And the paramedic I remember her face over mine, and I woke up to like pressure in my chest. And she was like, you need to keep your eyes open. You need to stay with us. You are not going back to sleep now. Keep your eyes open. You need to stay with us, Brianna. And that's like, okay, it's fight time now. This is fight or flight now. It's time to fight. and they pulled me into the back of the ambulance, and I heard already them talking about stars. And that's again when I was asking about the other driver, like maybe they're worse off, maybe they were in shock, and maybe they're for them, maybe I'm not as bad as I think I am, unless I got ripped in half and I don't see it, kind of thing. And it was like kind of a moment of franticness almost in the back of the ambulance. It's like, Stars needs to land on the highway. She will not be stable enough for ground transport. They need to have clearance to land on the highway. And when I heard like the loudness of the helicopter land like behind us, and within minutes of hearing that sound, Stars was in there, and they had put a hip binder on me. And just before that, I remember them cutting off my clothes, and I remember seeing the doors on the ambulance open, and I remember saying, "Please cover me up. I don't want my raisins on the local news station." And so they were all laughing at me. Hurt Brianna, so my priorities.
Come on.
Yeah, it's the interesting things that, like, the human preservation is one thing where you're going to be like, I'm going to fight to survive and I'm going to make this happen. But then also like you're talking about, you know, I don't want to be naked in front of all these people, or, you know, it's the weird things that are, you know, our brains like, no, this is my priority now. It's like, that's so interesting.
I know. And I kept like, that's just it. Like my thought process, my priorities were not very straight after that. It was, oh my goodness, I just crashed this car. Oh, someone needs to call work and let them know that I'm going to be missing my next few shifts.
Yeah.
And the pain, again, like I remember then after I kind of came to with that clarity, there was like pain and I couldn't really tell where it was. I just knew I was in severe pain, but I had loss of sensation. Like I couldn't feel my hands. I had no idea where my body was. It's like having your face frozen for the dentist, but that was my whole body.
Right.
And I was just like, something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And it was like stars happen so quickly, and I've worked with stars in the hospital in the ER before, and like it's always like that moment of like relief when stars finally comes in, because you know that patient's going to be in the best hands possible.
Right.
For sure.
And I truly felt like that when they came. It was like, my name is Jenny, I'm going to be your flight nurse, this is medic. I don't remember the medic's name. He was like, we're going to take you now, or I'm going to give you some fentanyl, we're going to go. And I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And while they were doing that, they already had another set of IVs in me. We were like, they were running to the helicopter, and I've never seen a patient be loaded into stars before. So I remember going into the back thinking like, this is so weird. Maybe this medication is making me goofy. Maybe I'm not going where I think I'm going. But the whole flight there, they were so reassuring. Like, we're going to get there in about 9 minutes. And I'm like, okay, what? 9 minutes? Where are we going? St. Anne? Like, how much further away was I? I was so confused and disoriented. And the whole time they had like maxed me out on fentanyl by the time we got to HSC, because the pain, again, it was so hard to tell them where it was at that point. But like, it just like, it was choking me. It really was just choking me. And I remember getting to HSC and feeling like we were so high up on the ground, like on the roof, and going into this little box that was the elevator and to get to the door, and then going to this special care unit. And that's where the nurses there started working on me. And I remember them, I am like one of those people that I don't remember phone numbers.
Okay.
My cell phone has all of my phone numbers, but John took the phone for me. And they're like, who can we call for you? And I'm like, well, whoever my emergency contact is, it's Brian or my mom or my dad. And like, well, what are their phone numbers? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what to tell you, but I don't know their numbers.
Yeah. And
so I guess your medical card, I had just re-registered, thank God, with Ryan's name and my mom's number on there. And so they called Ryan, but he was at work. Called my mom, but she was at work, and they called and and like, we can't wait anymore. Like, we kind of just got to send you now. Like, you have to start going for your scans. I'm like, oh God, okay. And before I left, I remember saying, okay, I have one phone number. It's been the same phone number my whole life, but it's very important now that you listen to me. And the nurse was like, okay, what is it? I'm like, this is my 70-year-old grandma. I was like, you need to be very calm when you tell her that I've been asking. You tell her that I'm okay, that I'm alive and talking, but that this is what's happened. So somebody knows that I'm hurt at least. And she's like, okay. So I went for my pan scan and came back, and she was like, we got a hold of your grandma. She's a very sweet lady, but we got a hold of your grandma, and they know. And she said that she would let everyone know. And I think within a matter of like 5 minutes, she had started a little photo tree in our family. And so everyone knew. Wow. And at that, it's COVID, right? So my family wasn't allowed in. Ryan was actually on the way. So he was at work, but that day he was going to go pick up my engagement ring. And he's had all these phone calls on the phone. He was like, oh, it's from her mom, it's from her dad. They're like calling to like congratulate me. They know that I'm going to get the ring. So he didn't think to answer it right away.
Yeah.
And so he got a bunch of missed phone calls from a random number he didn't know. And when he picked up the phone and it was a voicemail saying Brianna's been in an accident, she's at HSC, it was from the hospital. He was like, it was almost like surreal. He was like, I didn't think it was that bad at first because nobody was really saying anything. And the lady on the phone was very calm. She said you were talking, that you were, stable, and that you were doing all right. And he's like, I'm thinking maybe you got into like a minor like fender bender kind of thing.
Yeah.
He was like, until your aunt was like, oh my God, I think this is Brianna's car. They said she was in an accident. It's already on the news. And he was like, when I seen your car, he was like, I thought for sure there was no way they were talking about the same person. He was like, I thought that you were dead, that maybe they were trying to keep me calm. So he ran from the hospital and went straight to the hospital or from work to the hospital. And when he got there, he wasn't allowed in. And he told that to my parents too, like, don't bother coming. They're not letting us in because of COVID. That they have to wait till she's on a floor till we can go and see her. We can't go into the ER. And so like, that was the worst, being in that much pain, being that scared, and still not knowing if my mom, dad, or Ryan knew yet. I thought I was all alone. And it was after I came out of the PAN scan, and I remember a nurse like meeting me here, and she was just like, Brianna, it's very important that you don't move right now. Don't talk. I can hear, like, know that I am acknowledging that you can hear me, but it's important that you don't talk, you don't move, you don't do anything. And I'm thinking, what the hell did they find in there? Twin? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And when they pulled me out and they finally got me like into like a more stable like frame where I couldn't move, they were just like, okay, from what we know right now, that you dissected an artery in your neck, you broke your neck at C2. We don't know how bad that is yet. You have multiple broken bones along your spine. Again, we don't know how bad those are yet. And you have a pneumothorax, so I did puncture a lung, and that I broke a bunch of ribs. And I remember thinking like, yeah, I probably knew about my back, like that hurt. I was like, but what did you say about my neck?
Yeah.
I was like, I broke my what? And they're like, don't talk. And they're like, neck at C2, and it's very important that you stay calm and that you don't move right now.
Yeah.
And just after they said that, I heard Ryan's voice in the hallway, and so I yelled out, Ryan, and he came in, he grabbed my hand right away, and the doctor was like, don't touch her, put her hand back down.
Yeah.
And that's when they explained to him the nature of my injuries, and that they had a few options, but they had to think about them relatively quickly. That spinal fusion at that level would result from complete immobilization of my neck from about collarbone. They were going to have to mobilize my complete C-spine. So from base of my skull down, and I would have no movement of my neck for the rest of my life. That would completely take away the movement of my neck for the rest of my life.
Right.
That they could put me in a halo brace. That was an external fixation device that would screw into my skull, hold me stable, and hopefully give me enough time to stabilize, to see if maybe they could do a less invasive type of stabilization where they would only have to minimally stabilize my spine. The other component of that, though, is that my lower back fractures were so severe. There's another kind of back brace called So sometimes those back braces are preferred to stabilize those kinds of breaks, but they really had to choose which one was going to be more beneficial for me. And obviously they chose my neck.
Yeah.
So they put me in a halo device, and again, an experience that I don't wish on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
They froze my skin with lidocaine in the 4 spots where the screws were going to be put in. And traditionally the patient sits up at 90 degrees when that is placed. I couldn't because of the nature of my other injuries. So I need to be fully awake and conscious for this to help engage what shoulder muscles I could and scowl so they could avoid my facial nerves and muscles. And I remember there was all these males and they were in, and they were trying to like stabilize me and kind of turn me minimally so they could get access to 2 points at once. And again, the pain was so severe, and they're like, nothing they were doing at this point was controlling the pain. So I think the pain from all of my other injuries mixed with this kind of just amplified what they were doing. So I felt pressure when they started drilling into my skin, but when they reached the skull, I felt that. So typically your bones don't really have nerve like endings or feelings, but I was awake, and so I could feel the pressure in my skull as they were putting that in. And I remember the pain being so severe, and I was in a 2-bed special care unit. So there was some poor soul laying in the bed next to me, and I couldn't help it. I just started screaming, and I was begging them to stop. And they're like, we can't, we have to just keep going now, Brianna. And they're like, it was good that I was screaming because I was still engaging my facial nerve. And they're like, just keep sounding, you're almost done, you're almost done. And then I heard Ryan, they're like, he was saying, stop it, like sedate her, this is enough, this is enough.
Yeah.
And Brian was like, out of this entire experience, he was like, that almost made me pass out watching them do that. He was like, it looked like a medieval torture device that they were doing. He was like, and I couldn't watch. And he was like, I turned my back, and he was like, you couldn't see. He was like, but I was emotional. And he was like, and I was begging for them to stop. And he was like, at that point, we knew they couldn't, because the only other option was surgery that would immobilize me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. That's, well, there's so much there, honestly. So, Jesus Christ. Okay. So
before
again,
we move on quick, I do want to give props to John
yeah,
for being as calm as he was in that situation, because Reg and I get training in CPR and first aid every few years through work, and you like to hope that you know enough in those situations to remain calm, but to come into something that serious and come in and know enough to keep you in C-spine and be like, hey, like you can't move, let's just be calm. Yeah, I'll just take your cell phone, don't worry.
Yeah.
The nerves of steel that guy had to do that and not just be like in a panic blows my mind, and I want to give huge props to him.
I like remember that he had like this low voice, and I remember at one point touching his hands and thinking, oh, this is a working man, this is like a man who's got rough hands, like he's worked like his whole life. And like his voice was just so calm, and I referred to him as Angel John. I wasn't even sure if his name was John. I thought maybe for a while I had made it up. So my family, we for like, I think 2.5 weeks before we finally found this man, he was just Angel John. That's what everyone called him. And the doctors very frankly said they weren't sure how I was as well off as I was, because of where my artery dissected. There's like a 98% chance of that leading to massive stroke.
Right.
Where my neck broke, how it broke, and the amount of fragmentation, any amount of that at that level, had I moved any more, could have severed my spinal cord at that C2 level. I would have been a complete quadriplegic.
Right.
And I think that because I was moving around, when he finally stabilized me, that gave my body, that was it. That was the last point I moved. Had I been able to frantically flail around there like I was, I would have probably killed myself.
Yeah.
Right.
And he, again, was so calm. And if there was ever, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that. And there was a reason John was on the road that day. And I believe that was it. Like,
sure. I mean, thankfully he was. But I'm also curious, as a nurse, I mean, you're going through it and you know all the technical terms and you know kind of the medical side of it. Do you think that was helpful in dealing with the early stages of all of this, or would you have rather gone in kind of ignorance is bliss and been like, this hurts like shit, stop touching me? Was it one way or the other?
Yeah, that's probably one of my most asked questions, actually. Like, did your nursing education help you or hinder you in this moment? And I think initially when I could kind of be like, oh, I think this and this has broken or this hurts, I think that was really helpful. But it was the moment when they told me that I broke my neck at C2, and I was just like, I know what that means. Yeah. And the fact that at that moment I couldn't feel anything, I was like, oh my God, I am a quadriplegic here now. My life is over. There was a moment again where I just the pain kind of went away, and I just was in such a panic that my life was over, and my life had only just begun. And there was when they say your life flashes before your eyes, there was a moment where I thought of everything I just lost. Everything I'd worked so hard for was gone. And they came and they're like, we don't see, and your spinal cord is very swollen right now. There's a lot of swelling through all the trauma and breaks. So we think you're in spinal shock right now. And that's why you can't feel anything. And there was so much trauma high up that's why I couldn't feel anything from chest down. And they weren't sure at that time if there was an incomplete spinal cord injury or not, just because, again, some of the breaks were quite severe, and they started at C2 and they went their whole way down the rest of my spine. Right. But it was that, I think that was a terrifying moment, knowing that. Very helpful, though, my education going forward, because Ryan never he never once missed a day there, but there was a lot of medical talk throughout that. So they would come in the room and they would say a lot of stuff, and I could see that Ryan just they were talking doctor and they didn't know. Yeah. And so I just explained it to him. So it was very good to help manage my care after that, and to help manage my care now. I think it's been very beneficial.
What an interesting dynamic when you think about it, right? That if you're Ryan and you want to be there for your spouse, and you're like, I want to be in it, I'll do it. Let me do whatever you want me to do. But then now you being the patient, now has to translate that to layman speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting dynamic, and based on all your videos and all of your content, props to Ryan. Like, it
100%.
sounds like he's been a hell of a soldier in all this too.
Yeah, he's like the unspoken hero of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's always a moment in everyone's relationship where like, is the other person going to be able to handle a traumatic situation?
For sure.
If something really big is going to happen to us, is the other person going to be able to step up when I need them? And I remember, again, just before they put the halo on and I thought that I was going to be basically a vegetable, I told him, I'm like, I think that this is going to be a lot. If I'm a quadriplegic, it's okay if you can't stay. I don't anticipate you to stay. This is going to be a lot of work. I know that you love me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, like, you know, you will always love me, but I don't want you to stay just to like save face, because this is going to be a lot of work for the rest of our lives. Like, I gave him an out right away, and he was so mad that I said that to him. Like, so insulted that I would ever even come out of my mouth to him. And he learned from like the moment that they started doing bed baths and like transfers and changing me, and he was involved in care right away. I don't remember those first few days, but when I finally came to, one of the nurses was like, "Oh, it's so amazing that your husband is a nurse and a caregiver." I'm like, I don't know what medication I've been on and what I've been telling you people, but he's not a nurse. And like, there's no diamond on this finger. He's not my husband. And they were hysterical. And they're like, well, he's been so helpful and he's like so involved in your care. And he's like, there's many times where he doesn't even let us touch you. He's like, let me do it. Just tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, he never missed a step. He was there from the moment I needed him, and he's never missed a day by my side now.
Well, props to Ryan.
Awesome.
Hell of a guy.
Phenomenal.
Never met him, but I love him. That's amazing.
You're the best.
And I also got to say, this is one of the rare, almost full ginger episodes. So props to that.
Hey, look at that.
Can't go outside ever, but no. Anyway, moving on. So then, after they put the halo on, kind of what was the prognosis? Kind of what was that afterwards? Did they give you? Were there a lot of percentages that they're like, the odds of this might happen, blah, 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 blah? Kind of what happened after that?
No, because I shouldn't be functional and I shouldn't have lived. And so when they came in, they're like, you're a miracle. And the doctor was like, you know what? I'm a scientific man and I don't say things like this a lot. Mm-hmm. He was like, the kid, you're about as fucking lucky as it gets. He was like, if one other thing had gone just even a millimeter the other way, or you would have been left a little bit longer, he was like, you would not be here and you would not be who you are. Mm. You might even just be a body here at this point. He was like, and so the fact that we're sitting here talking right now, he was like, and that I've looked over your spinal scans, and he was like, and I don't see a spinal cord injury. He's like, I know and anticipate that there is a lot of nerve damage. He was like, but I can't even give you a time frame here of recovery because you shouldn't be here to recover, kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
So everyone always asks, well, what is the long-term of this? What is the longevity of this? The prognosis? What is that going to look like? I don't even have a true diagnosis because my spinal cord is intact, but I had so many breaks at so many levels that lots of my injuries are very concurrent with lower spinal cord injury. And if my spinal cord was swollen at that level for so long, those nerves may have died. And it takes about a year for nerves to grow back if they're engaged correctly. Mm-hmm. Mine haven't, because I haven't had spinal rehab. So that's where all of that starts to come into play.
Right.
Of course. Yeah, Randy, what would you say yours, because you've had the rollover, would you say that's your closest near-death experience?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that was and luckily I didn't have any injuries, but that was kind of a freaky time. And yeah, you sort of do. The life flash before your eyes thing does sort of happen when you're in those moments, because you're in that 7 minutes of clarity in the 5
seconds. So you had no
injuries.
You rolled your vehicle and had no injuries?
No, I got really lucky. I hit the ditch. It was a slushy day, and I hit the edge, and I jumped a driveway into a ditch, and it was me and my friend Bronson in the truck, and I rolled. It was 6 times. And then we came up on the wheels, which the whole time I was just like, please land on the wheels. Please land on the wheels. Yeah. So come up on the wheels. I had some cuts on my hands. I think Bronson messed up his nose because my hand flew across and smacked him. But other than that, no injuries. We were super lucky that day for sure.
Yeah. I remember seeing the truck because it it was parked in like a parking lot in town, and I hadn't even heard about the accident yet.
Yeah,
I
you
guess it had been
texted me.
towed. Yeah, and I saw it there, and I'm like, that looks like Randy's truck. What the fuck? What's going on? And I found that he's in the hospital. And I show up, dude's laying on a spine board or whatever right in the entryway. I'm like, are you okay? Like, nobody told me anything.
Yeah.
I'm just like a nervous.
Well, and the
husband.
hospital called my mom, and the first thing they say is, "We can't tell you anything, but he's okay." So she's like, "What? Like you're gonna get someone who can tell me something right now?"
As a former paramedic too, she would definitely
Exactly, right. And I have to say, Brianna, your story resonates with me too, because she's been a guest on the show. My cousin Crystal was involved in a very severe car accident as well, where she nearly lost her life. She was gone on the table a few times. So your story resonates with me because it's been in my family. Things like this have happened. She's still looking for a kidney, which we're hoping to help find for her. But the perseverance involved and the strength it takes for you guys to keep getting up when you get knocked back down and keep defying the odds and recovering as well as you are so far. Major props to you guys, because it takes a lot of heart to not just give up and to keep going through it. So super props to you.
I think there's like everybody asked that, like even like the moment in the hospital where he's like, I don't like, you can't walk right now, but I don't see why there's any reason why you can't eventually walk when your nerves and that everything heals. And I remember that moment being like, oh yeah, we're walking here now, we're standing, we're gonna stand here. And they're like, well, you can't even sit up yet. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah. There's a lot of medication on board. And I remember the physiotherapist, and it was like 4 physiotherapists, the 2 nurses, and Ryan. I made them sit me up at the edge of the bed. And I remember thinking then, like, that's okay. We're fighting here now. Like, I didn't live here just to sit in a bed and like mope about this. Like, I remember saying to the doctor, I'm like, how do we think about getting back to my job by Christmas? Because I got injured in August. And he looked at me, he was like, kid, let's talk about Christmas next year. And I was like, please.
Yeah, bitch, please. Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Who you're talking to, right? Come on.
Yeah.
But so this sort of leads us into, so you're recovering now. The fight is for your physical therapy and your spinal rehabilitation. At what point in this process did you finally have to get involved with MPI and start figuring out all of the mess around this?
So early on in the hospital, I had a representative, I guess, from MPI come and say, like, this is what's going to happen. Here's something to go over. And again, at this point, I couldn't even sit up in bed. And I was on so much medication. I was on IV ketamine, IV hydromorph, IV fentanyl, IV morphine, IV electrolytes, IV fluids, and I was getting shots of Toradol. Like, everything that you can imagine was being pumped into my body to control my pain. So I was not a competent person to be speaking with them and to know what was going on. Yeah. And they had called me while I was on all this medication to try to get like the story of what had happened. And I remember saying, like, I don't know that this is a legal document. You shouldn't be taking it from me right now because I'm unreliable.
Yeah.
And it even says that in my like MPI write-up, like, or a client says that she's on this and is unreliable at times. And so they were involved from the moment I was at HSC. And initially it was quite quick. I felt like, wow, I'd always heard horror stories that like MPI was so slow and they didn't do this and that. And I remember thinking, they're on it. So like, they're getting like on it. My caseworker was very quick to make sure that my wage management was getting covered as soon as possible, kind of thing. But that's like the quickness of where that started. That's where it stopped as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got sent out of HSC probably before I should have. And I say probably because my physiotherapist fought for me to stay, but there was no beds to be had. The day that I left, they said, there's not hospital beds on this floor. There's not hospital beds anywhere in the hospital. And when I left, there was a man in the hallway who had this big bandage on his head who just had brain surgery in the hallway. And so you're one of the most stable patients that we can send to your rural hospital. It's closer to you. They have a rehab program. So it was said to us that we got transferred out because of COVID and they had no extra beds. So I didn't receive spinal rehab there. So when I got sent to Steinbeck, I did their physiotherapy program. And I think they were hoping that I was going to be able to do stairs. And that's what they were hoping that I was going to be able to do by the time I left there. And so their discharge day for me was, I think, November 28th. Right. And I remember thinking, like, oh my God, this is going to be a long hospital stay. And I was only allowed to have Ryan. They made exceptions for my mom because she hadn't seen me yet since my accident. And the nurses were so lovely at both facilities, healthcare aides, nurses, they were lovely. But I really fell through the system because of COVID. And my care was really, like in terms of like rehab, it was, I took what I got kind of thing, and that's as good as it got. And when I asked at MPI, when it became time to come home and they were realizing, this is an unrealistic goal, that these are injuries that we're not sure will be healed. And it's time to maybe think about going home because COVID started getting a little bit more serious. They were talking about turning that ward into the COVID ward. And obviously I wouldn't have fared well against COVID at that point. My body wouldn't have been able to handle it. Yeah. And that going home would probably be the best decision at that point. And then MPI gets involved about going home. And when it was said, I need full round-the-clock care. Like, I can't get to the bathroom. I can't get to the wheelchair by myself. I can't even sit up by myself at this point. I have a device screwed to my skull right now.
Yeah,
right.
And then I'm a high stroke risk because of the dissection in my artery. Word for word, and I joke you not, this is not an exaggeration. Well, caregiver allowance is assessed, and you're given kind of what's based on an assessment. And if you meet the requirements to receive full level of care, you might get up to 8 hours of care, but it depends what you want. If you choose home care service, it's $35 an hour, which would have only allotted me 4 hours of care throughout the whole day.
Right.
Or I could pay minimum wage to a family member to come and sit with me. And Ryan was like, I've already taken 2 months off work. Like, I don't know that I can take off anymore. So 4 hours of care, what happens in between? They're like, oh, well, they could come either like 1 hour, take a few hours off and go in between, or do 4 hours of care all at once. And we're like, what about the hours that are not covered?
Yeah.
And like, it's embarrassing, but it's nature of the injuries. I was incontinent and couldn't go to the bathroom by myself and couldn't get there. And it was just said, well, that we would put her in a brief and we would leave water or something bedside because she can't get to the kitchen, and she would have to just kind of sit there and just wait till care comes. Eventually the care would come. So the rage that Ryan and I felt literally said, so you mean to tell me I would be no better than a family dog, that I would be sitting in my own filth for hours before I could be cared to? And she was like, well, that, or you choose to stay in the hospital or facility. I was like, so what? I was like, the option isn't there to stay at the hospital anymore. Yeah. Like, it's time to go home.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, those are your options. I don't know what else to tell you. And she's like, I don't even know what care allowance you would be assessed. She's like, I have no idea how to word that. She's like, an OT would have to come see you. And I was like, well, can't the OT at the hospital here say like, yes, she can't go to the bathroom. She can't go to get a drink. My house is inaccessible. I still sleep in a hospital bed in the middle of my living room. And she's like, well, I can't say it that at this point. And so I was like, wow, this is going to be a fight.
Yeah.
This would be a fight. And they didn't want to put a stair lift in my house even to start. And it was the doctor at this point at Steinbach Hospital who was like, this is an unrealistic goal. She won't be able to do stairs. Not only can she not feel her legs to move them, all of my sensory information and sensory system was damaged in the accident. My vestibular system, my ocular system, everything that would say it's safe to walk on stairs, you wouldn't. Kind of like you can't hit your hand with a hammer. Your body doesn't let you do things that aren't safe.
Yeah.
Right.
My body wouldn't have allowed me to do that at that point. And he tried explaining that to them, like, she's not gonna be able to do these stairs. It's unrealistic. So let's put a stair lift in. My doctor had to say she needs a stair lift before MPI would even do it. And there's about 10 stairs in my entrance to get up, which would have never happened. And just like the basic minimal care started then. And I think I knew then, like, okay, this probably would have been MPI is probably an amazing system when it comes to like baseline things. Like, this person, got whiplash in this accident, we will be able to rehab them and it'll be fine.
Right.
But what I found now through, like, I'm again not exaggerating, there's been hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who've reached out to me now to explain similar, if not the same story.
Yeah.
When it comes to that level of care that is needed beyond just like a rehab, like just like minimal rehab and minimal things, it is a fight. Ryan washed me in salad bowls our salad bowls for 2 months before Bed Bath equipment was even provided.
Wow.
Like, I was just talking to my
Unreal.
wife before we started this actually, and I said to her, I was like, in what universe can they justify saying that someone who was in an accident that was of no fault of their own, why is there not just a blank check? Be like, this is, consult with the doctors, with the specialists, with the whoever, and who the fuck's making this decision? Why aren't they just like, okay, so she needs this, get it done. Need this,
If you've got enough money to send every licensed driver who has a registered car in this province a few $100s, you're telling me that you can't put this money towards the people who need it?
And they've been overcharging for decades, so
Precisely.
well, fucking just do it. Boom, 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 boom. Because I mean, let's be real. How many instances like that are as severe as yours are happening? You know what I mean? It's not that common. So even if you're paying out fully, 100% to the people like in your situation that need it desperately, why are we slowing down? Let's just give her. I don't know.
You sign a paper. Actually, when I got to Steinbach and I had to start signing my stuff for like authorization for them to get my medical records and all that, you sign a paper that says that there will be no large lump sum payouts done by MPI, that there's no money to be seen. Everyone thinks that my life is just like, oh, your life is paid for now. Where? When?
Yeah.
They don't measure, like, there is sometimes payout for scarring that isn't measured till next year, till my body's had a full year to heal them over. There is no, like, my injuries are catastrophic in the sense that I am immobile. But where they're getting off now on all of this in between stuff is because I don't have a diagnosed spinal cord injury. I have neurological injuries that are not yet diagnosed because I'm still waiting on the neurology consult. I've not even seen a neurologist yet. I have a neurosurgeon who is in charge of healing my spine, but not a neurologist. So they are getting off on all this in between stuff. And that is where
they're using the technicalities.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt to say that it's a difficult system to attribute money to human cost, in many ways. Like, if someone dies, how much does that cost? Blah, 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 blah. I understand. That's very difficult. But what are these people getting paid for if the system, when you need it, isn't there to help you?
But even that system itself is broken. Because in the end of all of this, had I died in that accident, the charge would have been exactly the same. The payout for whatever it would have been the same. It would have been $1,000. My life is worth $1,000 in this province. And anyone, sometimes people don't even get a charge and they walk scot-free. Ryan had an uncle die in a head-on collision, and that driver walked away without a fine. Nothing.
Wow. Anyway, speaking of that, on that note, actually talking about MPI and kind of the payments and stuff, we got a question from one of our listeners, Tanis, good friend of the show. She reached out to say she wanted to know if Manitoba Health covers anything, or if it's strictly MPI. It's no, like, there's no health coverage other than MPI.
Right, because it was on a vehicle.
Because, like, this is the problem I'm running into now. Because MPI is involved, MPI is supposed to be responsible for everything. So Manitoba Health has wiped their hands clean to me. They don't have to pay for anything because it's assumed the MPI will, and they will step in to cover what is needed. Again, there's a bunch of technicalities to my situation that is allowing them to say, like, well, we'll wait a year to see what the prognosis is. We'll wait for 15 months to see what this is like. And in that time frame, I am being left basically with nothing. So Manitoba Health doesn't help with that. Lots of people are like, well, I know that they pay for spinal rehab for this, and Manitoba Health covers for spinal rehab. And they would have had I stayed at HSC, but I got discharged from there long before I was, ready to.
Right.
And again, my physiotherapist would agree that I should have stayed there in that program, but because of COVID, I fell through that system, right? So I'm fighting against the system that I kind of fell through right now. And unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. And I have a voice where I think many others don't, because the amount of people that have reached out with similar stories is just heartbreaking. People hear my story and their hearts are broken for me, but I'm hearing hundreds of stories and my heart breaks for them because we are failing as a province to help people. This is the only insurance that we have, the only insurance that we can pay for, and this is what's happening. And it's not talked about, so nobody knows.
Well, exactly. There's all just the down the grapevine to say, oh yeah, no, it's probably fine. You get whatever. It's ludicrous. But on your point as well, to talk about kind of the community that you've created, I kind of wanted to talk about that. Again, so I came across you through Paranormies, sharing it, and and through that, I'm not on TikTok because I'm a grumpy old man, but apparently you're very, very popular on TikTok. But I've seen you on Instagram and all these videos, and I gotta say, I find your content funny and inspirational, and great. Frankly, it's great to watch, just to follow your recovery in a way that is accessible to those that aren't in it. Kind of maybe touch on the community that you've then created through this, and kind of your journey of documenting your recovery.
I early on in the hospital, when I could finally use my hands again, and I was addicted to TikTok before. It became this thing early quarantine, and everyone who has it, they started, if you're like an older adult, you're like, I'll just watch TikToks. I'm never going to make a TikTok. I'm just going to watch. And then you see something, you're like, oh, I can do that, but I can do that better. And I am that person. And so it started with a cheese grater and a wine glass on my head in my sunroom. And that's where my TikTok adventure began. And I gained a little bit of a following then. And then I went MIA. And so when I finally came back on, I seen like, oh, where, like, you're not posting any new content in a while. Where are you? And I posted that first video in the hospital because I seen another video of a girl who had been crushed by a pine tree and shared her story. And I'm like, just watching her and like seeing that someone else has been going through something so traumatic as well. And they lived when they shouldn't have. I'm like, if I know that that's helping me, I know that, and her situation, how many people get crushed by trees, right?
Yeah.
But so many people get into car accidents. I'm like, I have a chance here to help other people. And that's always been in my nature. That's why I want to be a nurse. I love people and I love what we can do for one another. And I just was early on decided I was going to be very matter of fact about my journey, whether it was embarrassing or hard or anything, because somebody else was going to benefit from that. And it proved to be true. 400,000 followers later, they are, all of them have their own story to tell. And even when I think I'm not helping or doing something, those are the days I'm lifted up, because like someone will always reach and be like, I watched your story today and like you've been through so much and I've hardly been what you've been through, and it just helps pick my day up. And that's like similar to the community now. Like people are inspired by this story because it is real. I talk about my mental health and how it suffered through this and my PTSD from this accident and the hardships with MPI and the positive moments, the moments where I got to come home and the in-betweens. Like it's just sharing my story without all of the, you know, BS in between, with a little humor, because I got a dark sense of humor.
Right up our alley. That's perfect.
You betcha.
But no, I think you've kind of hit on the positive side of the internet. Like we on the show and just in general, we kind of, you know, bitch and moan about how much of the internet is a toxic wasteland. But it seems as though you've really found, it's not even a niche because it's really popular, but an avenue on the internet to use your experiences and your platform to tell your story. And like you say, it's relatable. And we try and say that even with the podcast that we've had guests on, they're like, well, why do you want to talk to me? And like, well, everybody has a story, and most people are more interesting than they're willing to admit, or they've been convinced that they're not, right? So I'm pumped for you that you're able to use that positively and really reach people. I think that's amazing. And clearly our local community is going crazy for it right now. So that's amazing. I'm pumped for you.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with the realness too, right? Because I think people right now are drawn to the real stories, and not everything is filtered and curated and done that way, right? They appreciate, like, yeah, sometimes there are setbacks and life does suck, but it's how you push through them is what matters. And I think people, especially right now in the times we're in, need that little extra push to be like, oh yeah, I can still make things better as long as I keep trying. Yeah.
And again, I don't want to co-opt too much more of your time here, but I figure, if you're game, maybe we'll touch on kind of where you are now, kind of moving forward, you know, kind of the next steps, touch on the spinal rehab fundraiser again. And then I was thinking, we often do a thing we like to do. It's kind of like a rapid fire question thing, to sort of first thing off the top of your head. I have a bunch of questions here. If you're game, after we touch on the recovery, and we'll hit on that.
Oh yeah, you might get some wild answers, and I'm already sorry in advance.
Perfect. That's what makes it fun. Anyway, so based on, as I was saying, as of today, because I mean, we should probably also touch on your YouTube video that you dropped, where they sentenced the gentleman that did this, right? And it was a pittance, and it was clearly not enough. I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit beforehand, because that sort of seems to be very topical right now.
I think that is like the turning point in this for me. I went into sentencing thinking that there was going to be like a moment of closure for this for me. And it was very difficult leading up to this. Again, there was that John had the dash cam footage of this accident. He was following the truck that hit me, or that I hit, I should say. And I didn't want to watch that footage. I avoided it at all costs, but they told me that day that they were going to show that probably to the judge, so that I should probably see it beforehand, so I don't have an immediate reaction in the courtroom. So I watched it at a great personal expense. And then I was told that I was able to speak in court that day if I wanted to say, but it's a very like, you can say this, you can't say that, you can't have any inference on this, and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole long list of things you aren't and aren't allowed to say. So I never even got to tell that man everything I felt.
Yeah.
And my impact statement was like 20 minutes long. And if I could have gone for an hour for him, I would have. And back in February, they're like, we can just do this over the phone next week and we can just get it done and over with. And I was like, no, I want to see this person. I want him to see what my life really looks like now. And I would like to be able to see him, because if I could truly feel his remorse in that moment, and I could offer maybe forgiveness in that moment, that would let a huge weight off both of our backs. Because forgiveness is such a huge part of this. And I knew, like I said in my video, that there was never going to be justice, because we'll never take that moment back. He lives with unimaginable guilt, and I don't wish that for him. But my life is irrevocably changed now. And we could have worked together to make those 4 seconds count for somebody else. We could have worked together and made a difference where it really mattered. And so when I went in there that day, that was the moment. The night before court, I got his apology letter. It was about 2 paragraphs long, basically written off what I'd written in my impact statement, because his lawyer got my impact statement a week before so they could go over it.
Right.
So I got his apology letter the night before. And when I showed up in court that day with Ryan, he didn't show up. They decided to do their part over the phone. So it was just me, the judge, Ryan, the Crown, and the clerk in there that day. And I read to a telephone. I read my impact statement to a telephone. And the judge after this point basically just said, there's a lot of facts that were said too that really just took me and Ryan's breath away, like how fast he hit me, that they were looking for other cases to base penalty off of, but it's unprecedented that I lived, doing the speeds that I did. And that they had no real other charge to go forward with besides careless driving. And it was unbelievable. And like I said, you've seen the YouTube video, you know the facts, what was missed out, the not looking at driving records, not, minimal care was given to him kind of thing. But the judge said that he became desensitized. He does this every day. He becomes desensitized to these things, that he has never heard or read an impact statement like mine. Yeah. That often he takes these things home to his wife to get a second set of like eyes, clear view of what's going on. And he was like, and I couldn't even bring this home to my wife because I didn't want someone else to have to read or to go through what you've gone through. And know that the weight of what you say today holds incredible meaning to me and what is being done here today. But what was done was $1,000 fine, and he was given the chance to do more. Ultimately he was given $1,000 fine and a $2,000 restitution in order to be paid back to me, which doesn't even cover a month of spinal rehab. Right. And it was just so anticlimactic, the whole event. After it was said, he was like, okay, you guys are done, you guys can go. And that was it. Wow.
And but what the judge could have sentenced him to more if he decided he should? Or is that with like the cap or something? Is that all they
The Crown kind of left that open, and there would have been, I guess, option if he saw fit, but there wasn't much more he could do because of MPI says that no fault means no fault. Right. Like there was not anything else that really could be done. And I came home and I was just so defeated because I kept such a positive outlook for this. Like things will come to a closure. I will have a moment here where this will maybe be worthwhile, not worthwhile, but like there would have been some kind of relief almost maybe to this, to know that I could have maybe made a change in a situation and have control over something I haven't had control over for a very long time. And there was none of that. And I just came home and I sobbed. I was in a very deep depression for about 2 weeks. And it was just unreal after that. Like, how I didn't know that this is what happens after people get into car accidents.
Right.
And nobody does. Nobody realizes what happens with the MPI after. Nobody realizes what it's like to go through the sentencing, to go through that. And that was reliving that trauma all over again. Every time I've had to go through that with somebody in the court and everyone, that is a moment where I have to go back to the worst day of my life. And it just didn't matter. It doesn't matter to anyone. It doesn't matter to MPI. It doesn't matter to our law. And again, it is not just me. There has been 1,000 people before me, and there will be 1,000 people after if we don't make a change. And that is the moment I realized I can do something here. I can use this platform I've created. I can bring awareness to a very broken system. And like I said, I don't want anything bad to this man. I don't wish harm on him. I don't even wish that our roles were reversed, because I don't wish that this happened to anyone. But 4 seconds counts. 4 seconds matters. And for just a moment in that courtroom, I wanted my life to matter. Of course. Because it hadn't up until that point. Being told that I could be left sitting in my own filth for hours, being washed in salad bowls, Ryan having to take 6 months off of work to be my caregiver, not being able to even bathe, wash my hair. Like, I wanted to matter. I wanted those seconds to come back and matter, and they didn't. But I can make them matter for somebody else.
For sure.
And we have a broken system. It's evident. And the amount of people that have come behind me now and said, it is broken. I've experienced this. I've been through this. I am not bashing MPI. I am not bashing our law system. I am saying that there is room for major change to be had here. For sure. And do I think that every accident deserves a fine and jail time? No, that's not what I'm saying. Because what happened to me, it wasn't an accident, it was a collision. An accident is slipping through the intersection when it's icy. It's rolling your vehicle because you hit loose gravel. It's wildlife. Those are things that are, like, very unpredictable and completely out of your control. But this was a choice. This was a choice. This wasn't an accident. And there should be more weight held to that. I chose to drive across 4 lanes of highway without looking, because I thought I could beat traffic that day, and I almost killed someone. There should be a, harsher penalty to that. Because if there was, people would probably think twice about doing that.
Exactly.
Kind of like why people don't drink and drive or do it as much, because they know there's going to be a criminal charge and they won't be able to cross the border. Things like that. 100%. So do you get jail time if you rear end someone? No. But there should be a different weight system to that. If you kill someone, there should be a different penalty to that. If you catastrophically injure someone, there should be a different weight to that. It's just
I just because I was going to ask actually on that. So do you have any changes you'd propose other than harsher penalties? Is there any? I imagine you're still working through kind of, I guess, your thoughts on it, but anything else come to mind that how we could improve the system?
Well, for starters, there needs to be lights at that intersection. But after that, it comes down to the fact that, like, who decided that $1,000 is the worth of somebody's life? That I mattered $1,000 in this world, and that was it. They would have never had to think of me again after that. And I'm not the kind of person that goes down easy. My mama always said that I had the voice for law, but the heart for healthcare, and I chose healthcare. So I was not going to go down without a fight after this, because I wasn't going to let anyone else go through this. But harsher penalties where it's due, and there needs to be some kind of weighted system that if you break someone's spine and they can't ever walk again, that's probably worth more. You should probably get more than 3 demerits and, live your merry life kind of thing. If you kill somebody, their life is worth more, and that family deserves more than knowing that their loved one was only worth $1,000.
Yeah, it's
and MPI, if you are the only insurance that we are allowed to have, and we can't even pay for premiums or better insurance, then you better be the best damn insurance that Manitobans can have, because it is ridiculous, the bare minimum that they're able to put out. And one of their core values is restoring functionality of life after, accidents. Where's my functionality of life?
Yeah, 100%.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's it's definitely a flawed issue, a flawed system. But it's so hard to hear. And again, that's from my privileged perspective of not having experienced it, right? I've never had to go through it, but you're absolutely right. There's tons of people that are dealing with the same thing, and we have no recourse. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah, we hear about too many Manitobans falling through the cracks in basically all of our governmental systems, and it's got to stop.
100%. Anyway, so on that morbid note, moving forward, so basically, let's think of something more positive. Kind of what's your status today? I know you had the halo that's now removed. Obviously, you're in the wheelchair, but at least you have mobility in some way. Kind of, how are you today?
So I'm, for all of the shit, for better use of words, that I've been through and what I've been going through, I'm okay. I can use my hands, I can use my arms. I have one semi-functional leg that we're kind of trying to work with.
Okay.
The other one I have no feeling, and I have no sense of where my legs are. So where you're sitting right now, you can't see your feet probably, but you know where they are. You know where they are and where your body is in relation to the world. I have no sense of that from about belly button down, where any of my body parts are. My legs could be in the splits right now and I wouldn't know.
Right.
And when I do step, and when they put me into like a walker position or a standing position, I don't feel the floor underneath my feet.
Oh, that must be so interesting, or so like disorienting. Yeah.
When I first stood up at the hospital, I kept attributing all of these things to all the medication I was on. And I think a big part of that, again, as a healthcare worker and as a nurse, I never tried to lose my mind, because I didn't want to be that patient. Oh, freaking out all the time. And, oh, it's got to be this. I just listened to whatever they said, be like, oh, this is the medication. I tried to come up with my own logical explanations. But when I got to Steinbach and I wasn't on all these medications and I still couldn't feel anything, that's when I was then explaining this doesn't feel the way that it does, like it normally does. And when the healthcare aides would come in, they'd have to put my legs back in the bed because I'd be falling out of bed and I had no idea. That's when I knew then that this isn't right. And I didn't make a big enough think about it to start, so I kind of fell through that crack again.
Right.
But besides that, I have physio 2 days a week with an athletic therapist. I missed out on actual spinal rehab, and I think I need to shed a little bit of light on that, because people are so confused why I'm having to, fundraise for spinal rehab. So yes, typically after spinal injury, people go to a spinal rehab program at HSE, or there's a paid rehab program that's free to people with spinal cord injuries. Where I fall through the crack is that I didn't have a true spinal cord injury, that I have neurologic injuries.
Right.
And I got sent out of that. I didn't even have that option. And HSE is not accepting outpatient program for spinal rehab because of COVID, and they haven't for almost a year now. And so when I started looking at external sources, First Steps Wellness came up, and Ryan's got family members and distant relatives and friends who have been through that program and seen huge success. And so I contacted them, because the other rehab center for spinal rehab in the city, again, is a Spinal Cord Injury Association that I don't qualify for because I don't have a diagnosed spinal cord injury.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, this is perfect. I found a reasonable option. I talked to the man who owns it in Regina, and they have the center here in Winnipeg. Shane brought it back because he seen success in that when he had to go there. So brought it to Winnipeg. I'm like, I found it now. They don't have to do any work. Fine. So I first brought this up to MPI. I'm like, okay, we found spinal rehab. It's more adequate to what I need. I'm receiving physical therapy with an athletic therapist right now, not even a specialized spinal therapist.
Right.
I was like, so let's do this then. I found a reasonable option. It was immediately said, well, no, we don't fund for those types of things. I'm like, it's spinal rehab. They have the option to make I could be functional. Yeah. I had home physiotherapy for almost 7 months while we waited for my neck to heal. So there's 7 months where I missed out on intensive physiotherapy, where it would have been the most beneficial to me. Right. So I am very, very far behind, and functionality is dwindling every time that another month goes on here. And that's when it was told to us that nerves regrow, but only if they're engaged every day properly, and they haven't been. So my nerves have not been growing back the way they're supposed to. So I came up with a formal proposal. I got my family doctor to say yes, she would oversee care, and she agreed that spinal rehab at First Step Wellness would be the most beneficial. My athletic therapist wrote in saying the same thing. They don't have the facility that they do there to help with these types of injuries. And she would work, in tandem with them and to have a fully rounded care. And the owner of First Step Wellness gave case studies, reason why I should go there, and, literally everything that I would be taken care of. It was denied because activity-based therapy is not funded by MPI. And because a medical doctor does not oversee care. Even though I had my own doctor say that she would oversee care. Keep in mind, a doctor does not oversee my care currently at the clinic that I go to. My doctor has no idea what goes on at the clinic. She even asked me one day, she's like, are you even in physiotherapy? She has no idea.
Wow.
So why that needed to be done, I have no idea. The therapists who work at First Steps Wellness are activity-based therapists with a kinesiology background and degree. They are educated people. And the therapist that I would specifically be working with is a physiotherapist with a PhD involved. She's highly qualified to be rehabbing me. And this is a specialized program that has run through Mayo Clinic, through Switzerland, all over the States. Yeah. Exercise-based therapy is the leading for rehab, spinal rehab. And they have the capability and the machines and the facility to help with neurologic injuries is what I have.
Right.
And they could get me walking functional. And MPI just doesn't pay for it. And CTV Global, when they all reached out to MPI to give a statement, they said basically the same thing, that legislation wouldn't give a comment on the situation, but there's no doctor that oversees the care. So First Steps Wellness doesn't, count. They don't count in this. So Saskatchewan has SGI. It's basically the exact same thing as MPI. Mm-hmm. And they didn't fund First Steps Wellness at first either. But now there's about 5 cases where they started funding because there's real success in these stories. And where my story differentiates from everyone else's, again, spinal cord injuries, there can be mobility and increased function after, but I have there is a real chance that I could stand on my own 2 feet again. Mm-hmm. I could walk into my job one day. I could help save a life in the ER. I could dance at my wedding. If they would just pay for this therapy, they could stop paying my wages because I could go back to work. This would be better for MPI in the long run, and they're not seeing that. Mm-hmm. And so I've been in contact with Shane now, and I think we're going to get together a list of cases just for Manitoba who've been to First Steps Wellness who've seen success in this program. MPI's other comment was that they gave the client adequate resources that MPI pays for, other than the therapy she has already received. And I'm going to make it very clear that the options they gave me were all clinics in Winnipeg for physiotherapy, athletic therapy, chiropractic therapy. I can't receive chiropractic therapy because of the nature of my breaks, acupuncture. That is what they covered. So the exact same therapy that I'm receiving right now with my established therapist, they just wanted me to go 2 times a week to the city instead for the exact same care. None of them specialize in spinal rehab. One facility specializes in helping elderly people return to more functional capabilities. That is ADL. It's that is putting on your socks, putting on your pants. I don't need that. I need spinal rehab.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a reason. They didn't come up with reasonable options for me. So when they told that was their statement to the news, I'm like, well, wouldn't the world be happy to know that was my options? More athletic therapy, not physio or not spinal rehab. Mm-hmm. So Ryan and I just talked, and I never wanted to have to ask for help. I don't know if it's pride, and I have a hard time asking for help. And I was embarrassed to have to start a GoFundMe and have to ask people for money for something that should have been covered.
100%. Yeah.
Very hard time saying, I need help, guys. I need help because we can't afford this anymore. And Ryan and I have already taken on many costs that aren't covered by MPI. We had to buy a brand new vehicle because I can't fit in a car, and we needed a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Ryan had to take 6 months off of work. It's just become far too costly now, things that I can't keep up with. And spinal rehab is anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 a month, which again isn't an exaggerated cost, because had MPI paid for 4 hours of athletic therapy every day for 5 days a week for 4 hours of time, that would have been the exact same cost. It's not that I'm asking for this exaggerated cost, and it's not some new space age program. It is just it's basic spinal rehab that I'm asking for.
Yeah.
And they're denying it. So we asked for help. I started a GoFundMe, and you know what? I knew the community has been behind me since the moment this happened. And so I knew that we would get a month, maybe 2 months paid for, and that would already probably benefit me, greatly. And I was so stressed the day that I started the GoFundMe, and Ryan was like, I'll take you on a walk. leave your phone inside and go for a walk. And when I came back, my phone was dead. It wouldn't turn on. I'm like, oh, great. Another thing, my phone is broken. So I go to plug it in. And when I turned it back on, there was thousands of notifications.
Wow.
The community was just, even now, everybody at some level has tried to step up and donate and help. And even just share. People think that like, oh, I don't have any money to give you. Like, I'm so sorry. And it is those people that just share, and knowing that that's all that they have to give, but they would still do that for me. I've spent many days just crying overwhelmed because it is just so beautiful what the community is doing, and that they're having to do this because they know that we're living in a broken system, and they're still stepping up. And during such a hard time in everyone's life, everybody is struggling right now. And I recognize everybody's struggles, that everybody right now is going through something incredibly difficult, and they still are choosing to help me. Yeah. And I will never be able to thank them enough for helping give back my life.
Of course. I'm so, it's amazing. I've been kind of watching the GoFundMe and just kind of keeping tabs on it. See, and frankly, when we arranged to have you on the show, it was actually a couple of weeks before, or maybe even longer. And I'm really, really glad that we were able to line this up to hopefully use whatever audience we have is a pittance compared to your TikTokers. But whatever we have, I'm so very glad that we were able to line this up in a way that I hope that everybody listening to this can either donate. And if you can't, there's no shame in that. There's zero shame in not being able to donate. But share it. Tell someone. Pass it around. We'll be blasting it as much as we can to try and get everybody on board, because let's try and line this up, because exactly like you said, you fell through the cracks through a system that needs reforming or needs improvement, and that's not your fault, and there's no shame in asking for it. But I understand how difficult that must have been. So props to you, props to the community, props to everybody that's donated so far and shared so far. Let's keep it going.
Keep the train rolling. Let's bring that money in, baby.
Yeah. We'll start a telethon. Randy
Go old school with it.
Yeah. Real quick before we do the rapid fire, I had a thought that just occurred to me as we were talking. How do I phrase this? It just occurred to me. I'm kind of thinking out loud. As someone that's wheelchair bound now, I've often heard stories of people that either they're disabled or maybe they have like some sort of mental disorder, but they're still alert so that they know what's going on. So they have an issue of, as they're going through the world, of either people staring at them and that feeling violating at the same time, or on the flip side, totally ignoring them as though they don't exist. How has that experience been for you? As far, again, maybe this is too personal to ask, but I'm curious, as someone who's now in a wheelchair, how's been navigating life been? Do you feel like, people are staring a lot or kind of ignoring you? Or are you trying to figure that out? Or
I think before you said something that really just like it touched it. It was before I had very privileged way of life and thinking, and I am very accommodating to accessibility people and their needs and special needs. I've helped volunteer with special needs community most of my life, and my mom worked with them for most of her life. So I think I have a very different outlook for that, but I never really ever put myself into that position, and no one ever does until you are in this position. And I kind of created my own little, I get stared at because of the following I have, because I'm everywhere now. And so I guess I created that for myself, but I am very embarrassed at times. I have a lot of noticeable scars, and I used to be a very independent person, fiercely, to the point where I would not ask for help. Not if I could have been dying, would have asked for help that day in that car. That's how fierce my independence was. So when we park, and even like at the Smitty's fundraiser, Ryan has to carry me in and out of the vehicle because it's not truly a wheelchair accessible vehicle. It's an SUV just to hold the wheelchair and the equipment. So there's not a lift to get me in and out of the vehicle. Ryan manually lifts and transfers me. But it's so embarrassing when there's so many people around and they have to watch that. I'm very embarrassed. Or having to go to the bathroom in public places and I can't fit in the stalls. My wheelchairs aren't paraplegic. They're not specialized to me. They don't fit me properly. So they're not set up for wheelchair accessible bathrooms. And the very first time, like normally there's always like a family washroom where you can go, and Ryan's always been able to help me. But there was this time when I first went to KP Mall when things opened up briefly there, and the family bathrooms were closed. And so I had to go to the women's bathroom for the first time by myself. And someone who wasn't in need of the accessible bathroom was using it. So I remember thinking, I've done that before. I've used accessible bathrooms when I didn't need them, and maybe somebody else was waiting. And so I waited. And I don't have the best control when it comes to my toileting needs. So when I need to go, I need to go. And so when I got in there, and I couldn't get to the bathroom or navigate in the small stalls, and Ryan couldn't come in and help me because it was the ladies' bathroom. And so that was just mortifying. It's so embarrassing. And I realized that every day that somebody is probably going through that. And my privileged way of thinking before never thought about accessibility, never thought about, can this person reach that? Can they do that? If I see someone struggling to reach items on the top shelf, should I offer my help or should I stand back? What would have been better for them? And right now, because I have weakness in my arms, I can't always grab what I need to grab, and if Ryan's not there. So if someone were to offer me help, I would really appreciate that. Instead of pulling down a whole shelf, I'd be a lot more embarrassed if that happened. But some people don't want that. Some people are very independent because they've become very used to that lifestyle now. So if maybe in the next year I've become used to this and I have more control of my body, I won't think twice about that. So it's like a fine line about like what you want and what you need. I do find it hard. I find it hard, but I've kind of created my own little show around me now.
And it's hard to hide with such bright hair anyway, so you're kind of always on like, hey, look at me.
Oh, yeah. But people have been great. Like, again, I think people recognize me in the community, and they recognize me from the news stories. So even when we're walking in town, the kids see me, they're like, you're the TikTok girl, I follow you on TikTok. And so then they want to have a picture and they want to talk, and like, they're so engaging. Like, people have been, again, like you said before, the internet and the world can be a very cruel place at times. But somehow I fall through the cracks for everything else, but I fell into this space where I am surrounded by positive people, caring people, and there's not a lot of trolls or people like, there's just been amazing people. So. And
if there are, fuck them. Like if
exactly,
if someone wants to go on and troll someone who's talking about her recovery, you know what I mean? Like, to hell with them. But yeah, and again, I only brought that up. I didn't want to push on anything that was too.
No, that's a great topic.
Yeah, because I've had the same thing where I read a book recently called Out of My Mind, based on a cerebral palsy girl who has like a photographic memory. So she's an incredibly good learner, but she can't communicate. So it's basically from her perspective as the world interacts with her, and how frustrating that is. So I've been trying to be more aware of, if I'm out and about and I see someone with obviously just I can't notice necessarily like a mental disability, but if with a physical disability, I'm trying to figure out the line for myself between being supportive as though they're just any other person that I see and not gawking, but at the same time not ignoring them as just because they're disabled. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a dance, but so I was interested about your perspective.
I felt that my halo, I was a spectacle. If anyone seen me, like when I would sit outside at Steinbach in their cancer care, and like the people on the street in the cars, they would like slow down and just stare at me. And I would get so upset. And there was a moment where I would just cry. I'm like, I'm a freak show here and everyone is staring. But then I realized if this had been the other way and I would see someone sitting casually talking with screws sticking out of their skull, I would probably stare too. And I'm a nurse, so I would be like in there like a dirty shirt, like, oh, let me see. Like, so I got it from both sides. I started to get used to it after a while. Now I think it's almost worse because people can't readily see the problem. They see that I'm in a wheelchair.
Right.
They don't know what's wrong with me. They see that when I'm with Ryan that I can talk, that I can move for the most part. I'm pretty good. They don't really understand. So I think it's almost worse now that people can't readily see the problem.
Yeah, it is a bummer that that's what we rely on. That if it's not screaming at us in the face, then we're so good at ignoring it and being like, oh, you're fine. You'll be okay. Maybe your leg hurts a little bit. You're fine. But again, this is another thing I'm glad we're bringing up because we're promoting, healthy, positive internet stuff, perseverance, all this, and also the fact that the people around us, they need a little bit more support than we often are willing to give or notice. So, that's that. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we do our quick rapid fire questions here, Randy or Brianna? What do you got?
Not for me. I'm like I said, you know what? Your story is so inspiring to me. Just to try to be better in life in general. I'm glad you're doing well for the most part now. I really hope you get the spinal rehab that you need. It's a shame that our province isn't doing more for you, and I hate that. And if there's anything I can do to do that, I'm going to try to look into it and see. But yeah, props to the community. Me and Reg often knock this community at times for being very divisive and being too opposite of the spectrum in a lot of things. But I think that for the most part, this area still holds that small town value of when something happens to one of our own, we're going to get behind them and we're going to help out. And I'm super glad that people have really stepped up and donated to your cause and are seeing the failings of the system and are reaching into their pockets at a time when a lot of people are tight and we're all, like, as you said, we're all going through this pandemic. And to be able to still come out and do that is awesome. And I applaud everybody who's donated. And again, even if you can't, that's no shame whatsoever. That's just, we're all where we're at. Just share it, get the word out there. And I really hope we can get you all the help you need.
For sure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Ginger solidarity. What? As always, I'm more of a day walker than either of you, but I have ginger in my blood. Anyway, moving on. I second everything Randy said, but we'll move on before he starts crying. And and
I'm trying to keep him at bay today. Okay.
Yeah. You don't want to smear your mascara, Randy.
Exactly.
Okay. So these are just random ones. I found this list on the internet, as I always do. Those of you that listen to the show for a while, this is something that is not new. But all right, so we'll start with you, Brianna. What's the first thing you grab for in the morning?
The remote for my bed to sit up.
That makes sense. That's pretty
Good
intuitive.
call.
Randy, you?
Phone to shut off the alarm, then a big glass of water.
Smart. Hydrate. I dig that. Personally, it's not because I'm going to check my phone, but it is the phone to bring it downstairs with me. So that makes sense. Brianna, who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Oh my good gracious. My granny. I would say my granny.
Yeah, I like that. That's fair. Randy, how about you?
My parents for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Me, inspiration. Am I inspired by anybody? Lots of people. Frankly, I'm surrounded by a lot of amazing people. And since I didn't pre-read any of this, I'm not quick on the ball. So I don't have anybody that's going to stand out to me. But we can say my dad. Sure. Let's do that. Let's see here. Brianna, what to you is the perfect, most ideal age to be?
Oh my good gracious. Well, how would I know that? That would, if I was older, maybe I would be better. Like, I think like 40 something would be a good age because I've lived some of my young life. I get to know a little bit more knowledge, but I'm not like really old at that point. So I can still have fun and like still be cool in your 40s. I'm thinking you can still be cool in your 40s. I'm not close to 40 yet.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Okay. We'll say 35 then. I will say 35 would be the best one.
That's a good call because I think I'd probably agree. In the neighborhood of mid-30s, I'm already 30, so I'm almost there. It's not ideal yet, but we'll see. We'll give it a couple more years and see how it shakes out. But Randy, what do you think?
I'm in the same camp, 35 to 40, because you're old enough. You're out of your party stage. You're doing all that. You're old enough to keep learning things, but you're also old enough to stop giving a shit about what people think about you.
Yeah, I dig that. I have a little bit of money, a little bit smarter, hopefully. All right, Brianna, high school, was it awesome or terrible?
I was like 50-50 because I was like well liked in school and like I wasn't like didn't have like a terrible time. I just like didn't love high school. I didn't like the school part. I loved the people part, but I didn't like the school part. I was 50-50.
Yeah, I think that's par for the course. Randy, what about you?
I'm much the same. I was there for the people, not necessarily the classes. I would say like 70% good, 70-30.
Yeah. I miss high school a lot, but I think it also is the connections, and I enjoy class setting in some way, learning some stuff, but I don't want to be forced to learn whatever I was forced to learn, so it's
arbitrary things.
Yeah, I don't know. I think overall it was fine. I don't know if I'd say it was awesome, but it kind of in the middle. All right, Brianna, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Oh, you'll have a friend in Randy then.
Dogs all the way.
I have 2 cats and no dogs, but I don't know if I would prefer cats over dogs overall. I'm not sure.
I don't think like dogs are your best friend. If you were to die in your house, your feral cats will eat you, but your dog will starve alone with you and go out with you.
One of our cats would probably eat me even if I weren't dead. If I just sleep long enough, he'll probably start eating my face. So, Randy, this one's for you. Adjective that best describes you when you're drunk.
Apologetic. I'm the classic, like, I'm sorry. Oh, and I spilled your drink. I'm so sorry. I'm definitely one of them. Or just jovial in general.
Yeah. How about you, Brianna?
Oh my God. I don't even know. I'm that classic crazy one. I don't know. I'm like adventurous. Like, let's climb the side of this building and see what's up there. Let's climb this tree. Let's go on a 12-mile hike. Like,
Yeah.
I'm the one.
Just white girl wasted, eh?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
We've all been there. For me, I'm naturally giggly as it is, so I'm at that and then some, and very loud, I'm pretty sure. So, again, I am as it is. But, and also when I'm drunk, people listening to the show won't like to hear this, but I've peed on a number of churches in Steinbach. But,
as you do.
Yeah, as one does. On your way to Sev to get
I've never done that before, but
yeah. Well, there's still time. You can whenever you like. You almost can't pee in Steinbach without hitting a church. So anyway, we'll move on here. Brianna, where do you want to go in the world? Any place that you want to go? Where do you want to go?
I want to go everywhere. I want to travel this last year. Besides breaking my back, I had COVID.
Yeah.
I want to go everywhere. Ryan's already traveled. All of my friends have been traveling. I want to go to Italy. Mm-hmm. I want to go stay in I don't want to stay in a hotel. I want to go to someone's house that rents out their room and meet a cute little Italian family. I want to go to Greece. I want to do the same thing there, travel and go through all the little shops there. Classic. I want to go to Australia like everyone does. Things like that.
There's not a single ugly white girl in Australia based on everyone I know that's been there. You follow the social media, it's all just basic white girls all over the place. Pretty 100%. Sure. It's the whole country. Randy, what about you? Where are you 100%.
Going? Scotland for sure. Go check out some of the ancestry there. The UK in general, I just want to check out because I like the vibe over in the UK. And I'm going to pick Iceland and go see the other half of my blood.
Go to Reykjavik.
Yes.
That's a good call. Brief little story about Italy. Kat and I were in Italy in 2018. We ended up staying in Rome a couple days extra. So we ended up, instead of staying in our hostel, we had to quickly scramble and find somewhere else to stay. And we picked up an Airbnb. And oh my God, it was horrifying. So we show up. This guy has pretty good English. He guides us through this front door. You have to go through a courtyard up to this inside the building. You get into this rickety, phone booth sized elevator, maybe smaller, and then you close the wood door and it's just clack, 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 all the way up, 5 stories. And Kat hates elevators as it is, and it was wonderful. Anyway, we get to the door. He opens it up. You go in, and it's kind of a long, narrow hallway with rooms kind of off of either side. And there was it all seemed normal. He seemed fine. He seemed very friendly. It was good. And so basically the first room was ours. Okay, great. And he signed everything and he leaves. And then as the day progresses, we come back and turns out there was a lady living there that nobody told us about, which was his mom, maybe. And so we walk out of the room. We were going to go to the bathroom and the place was spooky. There was dolls all over the place. And there was what are those called? Lovely. Those stone salt lamps or whatever. So it was sending an orange aura all over the place.
I would have slept outside.
Oh, we should have just found some cobblestone and just gotten comfy. But
he just walked into The Conjuring. Not a big deal.
Oh God, it was terrifying. So we basically, as we walk out of the room, suddenly she's there in the hallway with a walker, and it was dark. There was no lights on, and other than some side rooms or whatever. And then she starts chattering to us in Italian, and I'm like, I don't speak whatever. And she seemed friendly, but it was terrifying. So we quickly run to the bathroom because Kat wouldn't go by herself. And then we go to the room. I jammed a chair under the door to make sure nobody would come. And the literally the drapes matched the wallpaper, which matched the chair, but there was random like pictures super eerie, terrifying. Anyway, that was so be careful where you stay. That's where
they were looking to harvest your organs, I believe. That is the
yeah. I did have a small cut in my back, but it was it healed pretty quickly, so it's been fine. A couple more here. What is your absolute number one biggest pet peeve, Brianna?
Oh, I don't know.
Towel folded 2 ways.
The towel folded 2 or 3 ways instead of 2. Towels need to be folded into 3s for me and not into like 2s. Ryan's been in charge of the laundry this whole time, so when I finally got to open the towel door for the first time and I seen the state of the folded towels, almost had a meltdown.
Just
and Ryan
bedlam,
was like,
yeah. But does he at least put the toilet paper rolls the right way?
He goes to the bathroom in the bathroom downstairs. So
true.
Who knows what that's like? It's probably the best.
It's probably disturbing. You don't want to go down there anyway.
Probably like a news story.
Yeah, Randy, what do you? What's your biggest pet peeve?
My wife is also a stickler for the 3-fold towel, so you got that in common. So I that's drilled into my head. I'm gonna say people who swallow their drinks really loud. Like when you can hear the gulp going down. Oh, it drives me nuts.
Yeah, the really obsessively.
Yeah,
it's the worst. For me, it's something super nerdy and pedantic, but people who use unnecessary apostrophes drive me bananas. If it's plural, don't put an apostrophe. You don't need it. But signs across Steinbach, across the southeast, like, oh, just stop it. Get rid of it.
Right.
Anyway, all right. We'll leave this as the last one here. Brianna, how does someone instantly get on your good side, and then after that, what's something they do that instantly puts them on your bad side?
I'm very easy to please. If someone smiles at me, I love a smile. So complete stranger. If you smile at me, I probably already like you. It's probably good. And if I hear that if someone talks about me behind my back, I don't like confrontation, but I also like to be told right away. If I'm doing something that pisses you off, please just tell me so that I can fix it. And then we can be fine. We'll be fine about it. But the second I hear you're going to talk about me, that stinks.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Randy, what about you? What's something that gets somebody on your good side and your bad side?
If someone's like just being nice to people in general, like if they, someone greets people walking by, like kind of for no reason, like, hey, how's it going? I assume you're a nice person if you do things like that, or you're a serial killer in hiding. Who knows?
I was gonna say you're both gonna get abducted.
Yeah, exactly.
It's now.
Yeah, we're far too trusting of people. It's a ginger thing, I guess.
Must be.
For the bad side, I hate when this usually happens more in workplaces or if you're coaching sports and stuff. But like when people dress somebody down in front of everybody. And like something that should be taken care of privately, but they choose to do it in front of everyone. I hate that. I can't stand when people do that.
That's a
better one. I picked that one too, actually. I changed my answer because I don't like that either.
Drives me nuts. Or micromanaging. Don't like that either. As far as for me, getting on my good side, it's pretty easy. Again, I'm not going to walk away with any stranger that smiles at me or nods their head at me, apparently. But but that said, I consider myself fairly easygoing, and I get along with most people. It just depends on how much effort I want to put in. As far as the bad side, kind of fakeness, like being when you know that they're not being sincere, something like that. That kind of bugs me. But otherwise, just roll with it. We'll be all right.
Roll with the punches.
All right, cool. Well, we've stolen most of your afternoon, so let's shut her down here. We're gonna throw the GoFundMe link on everything as we post it. Is there anything, username, social media stuff that you want to plug before we shut her down, Brianna?
Just if you guys like anyone else who's listening who wants to follow my story, you can follow me on TikTok. That's where I do a lot of my updates. I have a YouTube channel that we're trying to grow, to hopefully keep up with awareness and bringing light to our stories and sharing what's been going on. And yeah, my GoFundMe, if you would like to help. If you can't, donate, again, that doesn't always matter to me. That's not what matters. What matters is that people care enough to share it and just be part of my story. Just sharing it as being part of my recovery. So
absolutely. We tried to order food at Smitty's on Friday, but that was in the middle of the collapse, so we we couldn't.
I was waiting there. We showed up, and they're like the lady of the hour, and they were like running inside, and like the team was so like the girls are smiling and like running as fast as they can. It's crazy, and they're like, we've just never had this many orders, and she's like, most like us two, we only started like during the pandemic, so it's never been this busy, and that's when everyone kept coming in. There was like 30 people, and they were like, it said our order was gonna be ready in 10 to 20 minutes. And like, who told you this time? Because we're on like an hour and a half wait.
Yeah.
And Ryan was like, that's your online system crashing. They're like, it's obviously a glitch and it's not keeping up. And now it's just telling that because it told us the same thing an hour ago because we'd been waiting about 2 hours. And they're like, oh goodness. So all these people, poor things, had ordered, and they're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It said it'll be ready in 15 minutes. Meanwhile, the kitchen is just like going crazy trying to pump out these orders.
Insane. Do you have any rough idea how many orders they had?
No, I have no idea. Not yet.
Well, they were off like gangbusters, so props to them. Speaking of all your platforms, you got the usernames handy, or just throw them out there?
My TikTok is Brianna Seewald 0. My Instagram is Rain Taylor, very hippie, RAINE Taylor .19 or 19, I think. That's just my middle name, my mom. And that's like all the people really. Oh, and I'm Trauma Queen on YouTube.
Nice. So. Nice. Okay, cool. Well then, like I said, thank you for joining us. This has been great. I don't ever want you to have to like rehash this again and again and again, but I mean, thank you for telling your story and
we really
walking
appreciate
through
it for sure.
With a couple of morons like us, and I hope that we can get a few people to, let's keep building this community, right? So
I think it gets easier to share my story now, knowing that this is like a fight now. Not a fight, but this is advocacy at its finest now. And my story, as traumatic as it is for me, it can help somebody else. So this is just as much about helping somebody else now. So it's getting easier. It's not about reliving the trauma anymore. It's about sharing what happened to make a difference.
Yeah. Great, real purpose behind it, and you can tell that you're pushing the boundaries with it. And I think that's great to push back against them. Your GoFundMe's just crossed 57,000 as I've been watching it now. Nice. Let's get it all the way to 200. That is what we are shooting for. So let's get it there.
Keep blowing it up, people, blowing it up. All right. Well, again, we've stolen enough of your time, so thank you for joining us. We'll, wish you all the best. Hopefully everything continues. You get the spinal therapy, get everything lined up, and soon you'll be sprinting up and down the street, getting drunk with your friends.
I am going to have a giant wedding at the MTS for everyone who's involved now, and y'all can watch me walk and dance down my aisle. We will have a giant party. Mark my words. We will be. I'll bring out the old cheerleader moves, and we'll do backflips down that aisle.
Excellent. We'll come MC the proceedings.
Pardon?
Yeah.
We'll come MC the proceedings.
Oh, good. Hired.
We'll get ordained.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah. A two idiots wedding. Make it legit. All right. Well, cool. I've said this enough times, but thank you for joining us. Hope you have a good day.
You too. Thank you for having me.
It.
You
thank
bet.
you.
All the best. Cheers.
You too.
All right. Well, that was a good one, I think. That was
good. That was great. She was awesome to have on. Glad she's getting her story out there and for people to hear. And like I said, to help other people in this situation, because we know MPI is not the only, she's not the only one they've dicked over. They've done this to a lot of people.
Yep.
And the more people become aware of that, hopefully they can make a change to their system.
I agree. Yeah. And as far as we've all had those near-death experiences, most of us have on some level. Like mine doesn't involve, well, that car I guess was close. I've also almost electrocuted myself, or I guess I did, and stuff like that. But to go through it, I've often, I don't know if I was even joking, but I've often half seriously told Kat that if I was ever in a situation where I was paraplegic or from the neck down or something, just pull the plug, just smother me with a pillow. And frankly, I've thought about even losing the use of my legs and how I would handle that. And I don't know
how do you cope with it, right?
I don't know if I could, if I'm being perfectly honest. I can't play hockey anymore, can't go drive anywhere, can't just be mobile and active and frankly, I'm a big fatso, so I'm not that mobile or active anyway. But you know what I mean? Like it's I don't. So props to her for persevering. That's what blew
100%. Like I totally agree with you, and I think the human spirit in that sense perseveres, in that you channel the things you've lost, and like she has, you put that fire into something else, right? And yeah, you just you make the best of what you can out of that.
Yeah, 100%. So as we've said about 150 times, go donate or go share wherever you find it. We'll have it on our social media and stuff. I'm going to change our Instagram bio to the same link. Yes. And I think we're probably going to be making a donation on behalf of the Two Idiots podcast as well.
100%.
And probably, we'll share it around. Anyway, so...
Yeah, like we said, no shame if you can't donate. That is 100%. It's all good. Just get the word out there. Put a share out. Let's get the story out. And like I said, let's get her on the road to 200. She's a quarter of the way there. We can get her the rest of the way. 5
days.
Unreal.
That's wild. So again, even $1, like she said in one of her earlier videos or in her video, if every one of her followers gives her $1, she could reach her goals.
100%.
Clearly. 400,000 TikTok followers. Good Lord. We were in the presence of a celebrity, Randy.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
The biggest ginger celebrity since Carrot Top.
High praise right there. High praise.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, well, thank you for listening. Let's do our quick little plugs here. Check her out on all the social media stuff. Like I said, I'm not just pumping her tires. Her videos are really funny.
Legit funny for sure.
It's like, it's over for you bitches, where it's like, if I get hot, it's over for you bitches. That video that got me, that made me laugh. So definitely check it all out. Rain Taylor on Instagram. And again, we'll be tagging all this stuff. I don't know how to tag TikTok accounts because I've never even opened TikTok.
We'll get them over there somehow.
Yeah, go check it out. It's all the kids. It's the haps. It's the happenings.
What's the haps?
Yeah, the straight fire and all that stuff. Fam. Hey, speaking of fam, did you see that? I think was it Nissan? Some car commercial. The most obnoxious thing ever. They're just like, this vehicle for your off-roading fam, and this one for your city fam, and they just kept using the word fam in like 5 different ways in this one commercial. I wanted to blow my brains out.
Trying to connect with the kids, man.
Yeah, it fell flat. Anyway, no free advertising, so screw you, Nissan, or whoever that.
No free clout.
Speaking of which, my Nissan car just died, so also screw you, Nissan.
Fuck Nissan.
Yeah. Okay, well, find us on Instagram at Two Idiots Podcast. On Facebook, search for Two Idiots Podcast. On Twitter, we're Two Idiots Show, even though I haven't posted anything on Twitter in like 6 weeks.
No one cares about Twitter.
Yeah, and YouTube, search up the Two Idiots Podcast. We're on there too. We're not big like them paranormy folk or the Trauma Queen and all that, but
we'll get.
We're there.
We'll get there.
I don't care.
In due time. You can also reach us by email at doubleidiotspodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, comments. If you want to give us guest ideas, if you want to be a guest, let us know. Still sending dick pics there if you want. Actually, Brian sent me over one the other day.
Was it legit?
That I had to rate. It was a whale's dick, but I rated it true to form. It was a solid. I think I gave it a 7 or an 8 out of 10.
He told me that he sent you one, but with Brian, you never know. He might have...
Yeah, exactly. But I think I knew what species of whale it was, and that concerned me. But
you knew?
Yeah, just seeing it through the water. But I assumed it was an orcas, but I don't know. And it's like, is that bad if I know that? I don't know.
You're just big on animal dicks. It's fine.
Yeah, orca dicks, man. I tell you.
Oh, speaking of such like that, I'm not going to add our Manscaped ad until right now because I didn't want to distract from the seriousness of our conversation.
Good idea.
So
you're going to hear that
right now.
Right now.
We interrupt this episode to bring you breaking news. This important PSA is brought to you by Manscaped.com. This is your pubic service announcement and the news you've all been waiting for. The Manscaped engineering team has confirmed that they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the USA and Canada.
This new trimmer was just released only moments ago, and we're one of the first to get our hands on it and share the news. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code IDIOTS at manscaped.com.
Worldwide. worldwide. I'm one of the first people to try the new 4.0, and I'm blown away by the performance. The craftsmanship and details on the 4.0 are next level. Honestly, I never thought I would ever be promoting the craftsmanship of a trimmer, but their advanced ceramic blade and skin-safe technology is so good that it almost seems as if Manscaped worked with Elon Musk's engineers to ensure your testes are as safe as possible. It's high praise.
That is high praise. Very much high praise. Now, again, fellas, we've all been there. We've nicked ourselves, and trimming your balls in general, I think it's good. I think it's, it keeps the odors down. It doesn't become cumbersome. You don't get tangles. You ever tangle a pubic hair? It ain't fun.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, it ain't fun. Okay. So what makes this trimmer different than all the other trimmers? A new multifunction on-off switch can engage a travel lock created for people who like to travel. The Lawnmower 4.0 gives you the ability to turn on the 4000K. This is a bright ass light, people. LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. The new trimmer even allows you to customize your trim all over through additional guard lengths with sizes 1 to 4. And looks wise, it's sleek with a two-tone matte and gloss finish. Even features a hot foil stamped black chrome Manscaped logo. Show that mower off loud and proud, baby.
Yeah, and with those guards, you can get the perfect fade on your your crotch shave. The optimized Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is waterproof, so you can groom in the shower and not have to worry about making a mess on the bathroom floor. Did I mention wireless charging? I didn't, but here we go. The Lawnmower 4.0's new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, so fancy I can't even say it, which can help the battery length last longer.
If you're still trimming your face with your ball trimmer, it's time to make some changes. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code IDIOTS at manscaped.com. No person wants to end up with pubes in their mouth, and your balls will thank you.
You're welcome, significant others. So treat yourself and the special person in your life by going to manscaped.com, where you get 20% off and free shipping with the code IDIOTS at manscaped.com. That is 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code IDIOTS, IDIOTS. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
And then when you come back, what you're going to hear is go to patreon.com/2idiots podcast after you make your Manscaped order on the internet. You head over there, you go sign up at one of our levels if you're so inclined. We have $3, $5, $7, $10 levels there. All kinds of extra perks, t-shirt draws, bonus episodes, all the good stuff for as low as $3 a month. If you want to throw some shekels our way, we really appreciate it. Helps out the show, helps us get some better equipment for you guys to make your listening experience that much more magical.
Especially on the off chance that someday we end up back in the studio. That'll be nice.
Precisely.
And if you're at the $7 tier and above, you are involved in our Idiot Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
That's where the people that give just a little bit more get a lot more love because they like us that much more.
They love us. They really love us.
Of the Two Idiots podcast, I'm switching up the order. We're going to start with Brian Muhor, the man, the myth, the legend, Brian Moore. Thank you,
Brian. Next up, we're going to have me mama, Danny Dewick.
Word.
Thank you.
Word.
We love you.
Yeah. Followed by Sir Drew McDonald of House McDonald.
Big Drew.
Yeah, descendant of Titanic survivors and former prime ministers.
Big
allegedly.
colonizer Drew.
Yeah.
You'll be pumped about that one.
Yeah.
We also have Kayla Lundberg on behalf of her and Jordan Peters. Thank you very much. Jordan posted on Facebook for the first time in a while and made me laugh the other day.
He did. He's still alive?
He did. I was shocked. It was just based telling people their heads were up their ass, which was great. But we'll talk about that later. Continue, Reg.
Perfect. Okay. Followed by Kayla and Jordan is Janet Gooden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have, of course, Mitchell Buck Pierce Buckers.
I don't even know if he likes football, but we've been calling him Buck Pierce since the first time we saw his name.
I don't know. We should ask him if he knows who Buck Pierce is.
Mitch, reach out to us. Do you know who Buck Pierce is? Or if you just think we're making up stupid names? But anyway, those are the current members of our Idiot Hall of Fame. Those are the people that get a little extra shout out because they love us a little
They do.
Little extra.
And
more
they
of
get
what I
extra
say.
stuff. I'm telling you, bonus episodes. Again, if we get 5 more patrons at any level, we're going to release the unreleased first edition of the Hot Jambalaya podcast.
Oh, it's only 4 more now.
4 more. Sorry, it's right. We did get one extra. So 4 more. Big 4. 4 more people. We're going to release a very special episode.
Yeah.
Of the doomed Hot Jambalaya podcast.
The one that I keep saying is terrible, but I want people to realize that it's because I think it's hilariously bad.
Exactly. It's
Not
so
because
bad it's good.
Yeah, exactly. It's a cult following. But anyway, so yeah, definitely head up to Patreon if you feel so inclined. Get yourself some merch if you like. It'll be in the show notes. The Teespring, blah 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 blah. Doesn't matter. But yeah, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got something out of this. Let's continue to advocate for MPI reform. Maybe we'll have to give Mr. Wabana Quick Canoe a little ring or a dingle, and be like, hey man, what can you do? What can you do? Pull some strings. Some strings.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's see. We'll reach out.
Fix it, Wob.
Fix it.
Yeah.
It's all on you now because we said so.
Exactly. But yeah, enjoy. Have a good day. We love you. Thank you for listening. Be kind to everyone, friends.
Stay safe and have fun. Was Miss Fizzley get messy, make mistakes, have fun?
Something like that. Keep fit and have fun. Body break.
Body break. With
I wanna
Al
get Hal
Johnson,
Jordan on the
Joanne
show.
McLeod. Al Johnson.
Whatever. Oh,
Al
Hal
Jordan.
is
We're gonna
Green
get
Lantern.
a Green Lantern on the show. That's fucking awesome.
Yes, please. Ryan Reynolds is the Green Lantern I want on the show.
He's coming eventually.
Yeah, Ryan. Okay. All right, folks. Well, thank you for listening. See you later. Goodbye.